According to this blood test right here, I am metabolically 17.3 years old. Now, I'm actually 31 years old. I'm a dad of 3. I run a small business. I train pretty hard and I eat relatively well, but I don't live some monk lifestyle that would warrant me having these type of numbers. So today, I want to break down what exactly this number means and whether it's legit, and walk you guys through the most interesting markers from my Function Health blood work, including a few things that were out of range of what I'm going to be doing to help improve those before I retest. And just so you guys know, I am not sponsored by Function Health in any way. I just chose them to do my blood work because I've heard a lot of good things about them. If you guys are interested in checking them out, I'll drop a link in the description. Also, please know I'm not here to diagnose, treat, or give any medical advice. This video is purely educational and meant to share my personal results and how I think about them as a physical therapist and a coach. Everyone's labs, history, and context are very different. So if you guys have any questions, please talk to your physician or healthcare provider before making any changes based on your blood work. All right, baby, let's dive in. I ran this full panel through Function Health back in September of 2025. This was literally a week before my son was born, which is my 3rd baby. So since then, we've been running around like crazy trying to get our feet under us as a family, and I haven't had time to make this video to go over the results. Now, this blood work is not just like a basic annual physical. It actually takes a deep look at metabolic health, hormones, inflammation, cardiovascular risk, nutrients, and organ function. Basically the stuff that determines how well your body is actually functioning on a day-to-day basis. I did not run this to chase perfect numbers. I really don't care about that. I just ran it to see how my body is responding to the life that I live. All the stressors, work, having kids, training, sleep, my diet, having Crohn's disease. All of these things are incredibly important to me, which is why I wanted to take a look under the hood. Now, metabolic age is not some magic number. It's actually a composite score that looks at things like blood sugar regulation, inflammation, cholesterol markers, hormones, and organ function. Then it compares all of these numbers to the population averages. That was something I was a little confused on before making this video, so I went and looked it up. Mine came back just over 13 years younger than my actual age, which sounds great, but I wanted to understand exactly why. So let's dive into some of these numbers and explain some of the things that I noticed. We'll start out with my metabolic health, because this basically drives almost everything. The big 3 numbers here were my fasting glucose, A1C, and insulin. My fasting glucose came back at 85, my A1C was 4.8, and my insulin was 6.8. This tells me that I'm insulin sensitive, not spiking and crashing in blood sugar, and not quietly drifting towards some metabolic dysfunction, which is incredibly important for me because I have a family history of diabetes. This is one of the biggest predictors of long-term health and energy levels. Next, we'll dive into inflammation, which was an interesting one considering that I have Crohn's disease, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. One of the biggest silent issues in modern day is chronic inflammation. My hs-CRP, which is a marker of systemic inflammation, came back at just under 0.2. And this is huge for me, especially considering that I have Crohn's disease. I've had this marker tested at much higher levels before when I wasn't medically managing my Crohn's disease. Chronic inflammation sits right underneath joint pain, cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, and accelerated aging. So keeping this low matters more than people realize. Next up, the fun one that everyone probably is curious about since I'm in the health and fitness industry, hormones and testosterone. Now, my testosterone came back at 626, which is interesting because I had my blood work done in my mid-20s, right before I got diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And my testosterone back then was, I think, 623. I'll attach a screenshot. I might be off on that, but I'm pretty sure it was 623, which is only a few points difference now that I'm 31 years old. Now, this was an important takeaway because since then, I've added 3 of my favorite stressors in the entire world with all 3 of my kids into my life. We've made multiple moves as a family. So I've had a lot of like external stressors in my life that have damaged my sleep, affected my training schedule, definitely affected the way that I eat. So I was really excited to see that this number came back at a relatively normal level, especially considering that I've never taken any PEDs, contrary to so many other people inside the fitness industry right now. And no jab at anyone taking PEDs or TRT. I simply just wanted to put that out there that I do not personally partake in that part because clearly I don't need it. Now, let's talk about thyroid. My thyroid panel looked pretty solid with the TSH levels around 1 and T3 and T4 within range and no thyroid antibodies. This tells me that my metabolism isn't being suppressed by stress, burnout, or some autoimmune issues, which supports energy, mood, and overall body composition. Next, we're gonna dive into some markers that were a little off for me, the cardiovascular markers. Now, this is where context seriously is everything. My standard LDL cholesterol was normal, but when you take a deeper look at my particle data, the LDL particle number and small LDL particles were elevated. and particle size was slightly lower. On its own, this could sound concerning, but you have to zoom out here. Because at the same time, my ApoB was normal, my HDL was strong, my triglycerides were normal, and inflammation was extremely low. Which is why this isn't exactly like a red flag for me. It's more of like a signal to optimize this part of my health. So here's what I'm gonna do about it. Before my next labs, I'm gonna be focusing on improving my omega-3 intake, cleaning up fat quality, and staying consistent with aerobic conditioning and continuing to manage my stress and sleep as well as I can with 3 young kids. Next was another biomarker that was a little off track, and it was my iron. My iron was clearly elevated, with my serum iron and iron saturation being high and ferritin within normal range. This tells me this isn't an iron overload disease, but it is something to keep an eye on. For me, this simply means avoiding iron supplementation, monitoring trends over time, and possibly donating some blood and retesting before jumping to any conclusions here. It's definitely not uncommon for iron to be slipped into certain multivitamins or other supplements, so that's the first place I'm gonna start, is checking all the different things that I take at home and making sure there's not excess iron located in any of those. Next, we'll talk about my omega balance and micronutrients. My omega-3 levels were in range, but they weren't exactly elite. Omega balance impacts inflammation, recovery, and even cholesterol particle behavior, so I'm prioritizing more fatty fish and cleaner fat sources before my next test to hopefully improve these numbers. The nice part was seeing these other numbers within a healthy range. My vitamin D came back at 83, which makes sense. I live in Florida, which is where we get a lot of sunshine. And other micronutrient markers like magnesium and B vitamin indicators all look solid as well. Next, we'll dive into organ function and urine markers. Thankfully, my kidney function, liver enzymes, and urine markers all came back clean, with no protein, no glucose in the urine, and normal filtration. This matters because it shows this isn't just a couple of good numbers, it's system-wide health. Overall, I was super pumped by this test. I thought it was a really cool way for me to see what exactly was going on underneath the hood and get a closer look at some things that I could optimize potentially through managing stress, exercise, or my diet. Once again, guys, I'm not sponsored by Function Health. There's a lot of different blood testing companies out there. I highly suggest you guys go do something like this if you can, because this was a really valuable process for me and something that I'm definitely gonna use to help adjust and modify my routine going forward. Anyways, hopefully you guys found this interesting. If you did, make sure you like this video, leave me a comment, let me know any questions you have, and please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to do a lot more YouTube right now, so make sure you guys subscribe. I'm gonna be putting out as much content as humanly possible. I appreciate you guys being here. If you want any of my free resources, check the links in the description. I will see you guys on the next one.